Alrighty, hello everyone, and welcome to Cinderful Gaming, and welcome to the Age of Sigmar narrative show. I hope you're all doing well. I hope everyone's staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the Grey. I know we sure are, but anyway, first of all, I'm joined by the real Godrek himself, Andrew. As always, how are you doing, buddy?
No, not too bad. Lockdown up here in sunny New South Wales. So,
Yeah, um, that's fun. We only recently got out of our own lockdown just under a month ago. We were in full quarantine where I was because I worked at the place where an outbreak was, so that was
yeah,
fun. Um,
uh, sort of surviving.
yeah. On the plus side, it does mean more time for hobby. So I got some stuff painted up during our little lockdown and our little quarantine period. Have you been working on some hobby as well?
I'm kind of doing multiple projects at once at the moment because I can't really decide still what I really want to do with the 13 armies. So I've been painting up some 40k and dabbling with what was my Slanesh list, which is probably going to end up being a Beast of Chaos list. So bits and pieces here and there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. I have, as people might have seen on the channel, been getting some Cruel Boys ready for launch because we're pretty sure at this point we're going to see Cruel Boys and Stormcast their battle tomes drop on the 28th of this month because we were told they were going to come out this month. Now, obviously, things can change. GW aren't great with keeping up with telling us things that change. However, it's the last weekend left available because we know Kill Team was a 2-week pre-order. So one would assume we're going to see pre-orders on the 28th for the battle tomes at least. I would not be surprised if we're going to see Stormcast and Cruel Boys released over like 3 to 4 weeks, much like we did Necrons and Space Marines for 40k last year.
Yeah, I would think so.
So I think that's going to be a very similar thing. But I'm hoping to have a 2,000 point army of Cruel Boys ready to go on launch. I've already got thousands and thousands of points of Stormcast painted up, as everyone has seen on the channel.
So just Cruel Boys, not some other Oryx in there.
No, just Cruel Boys. Like, Oryx were a weird one. Like, they never really appealed to me as an army until Cruel Boys came out. Like, Cruel Boys just have something about them that makes me want to get them. I was never a big Iron Jaws or Bone Splitters fan.
Yeah.
Cruel Boys is definitely the only part that really grips me.
Yeah.
Um,
I think we'll see a lot of Cruel Boys armies.
Yeah, I've played a couple of games with them without their rules. All I've been doing is I've been running like Big War plus the Cruel Boys Venom weapon rules, so that's been fun. Those Bolt Boys are legit when you make the Shaman and make them do mortals on 5s. 2 mortals on 5s is nice. I overwatched a unit of snakes and did 8 mortals on the on the charging unit. I killed 4 snakes when they charged me, so that was fun.
But you were popular.
Yeah, but yeah, they're fun. They've got a lot of things to them. I will look forward to a full battle tome of them. And so, I guess that sort of leads on to we're not going to do a news section. We're probably not going to do like the normal sort of stage of how we do the show. We haven't really got a topic. What we want to do today is we're going to sort of talk away through the new edition and like the last bits of the edition, the changeover, and all that sort of stuff because we've not really done any of that yet. And just sort of talk about, I guess my point is why this edition might be the best edition yet for narrative wargaming. And there's some very obvious reasons, and I think there's some very not so obvious reasons as to why that may be. So to start off with, though, we've seen the core rules and all that came out. Were you a sort of like a fan of how they did the release of like the core rules and stuff? How we got the initial core rules released for free originally so everyone could look. They had FAQs drop on day 1. Of course, we're still waiting for the 4-week FAQ of the actual General's Handbook and Rulebook themselves. But we got like updates for the armies actually 12 hours before the actual edition dropped, which was really cool.
No, I think in terms of the way they're releasing things now, I think they're definitely doing things a bit better. I mean, the only issue obviously is availability. I think so. It sounds like they fixed that with Kill Team. Like they made a point. They even said we've made some mistakes to release stuff. But I think in general the way that the rules came out, if you just want the rules, yep, they're free. In terms of the narrative stuff, obviously we wanted the big book, but even with that, like being able to get multiple types of that pretty early was cool.
Yeah, I think a really good thing, like that big book for me is a massive improvement. I think they've learned a lot from the 40k rulebook that came out last year.
Yeah.
Because having picked that up, like I immediately thought that 40k rulebook was really well done. How you had open narrative and competitive, or match play rather. There definitely wasn't competitive play. That's what the General's Handbook is for now.
Yeah.
But they had those three types of the games, and they had them really defined better than they ever had before in that book. And now we've got that in Age of Sigmar as well. We've got three very distinct ways to play.
Yeah, I think. I mean, it feels like what they're like with both systems. They're cross fertilizing a fair bit, and every time we get a new release from one or the other, they take on board whatever they learnt from the release of the former, and we get a better product as a result.
Yeah, and they're not directly copying. I think like some people maybe get the idea that like, or maybe say that like they're directly copying. This reminds me like a lot more back at the time when we had Fantasy and 40k taking things off each other and just learning how to improve the games between the two systems. Like I remember when 40k first got a psychic phase, it was massive because it's like, well, Fantasy's been doing this for ages with magic phase. 40k needed a psychic phase. It was just so much cleaner and better a phase to add in, and just gave us that game a whole nother level of goodness.
And I mean that kind of got rolled into obviously with AOS into the command phase, but it works.
Yeah. So I guess let's talk a little bit about that core rulebook, and we're going to talk about some of the changes in it. We'll leave the obvious narrative section for last, but I want to talk about the actual core rules themselves, because it's one thing that I think everything I've seen added has just improved the game from a narrative gamer's perspective. Everything just seems to flow in and build up the game so much better now.
Definitely. I mean, I think, and again, we're not talking about match play competitive stuff. We're talking about from a narrative perspective. Everything feels like you're fighting a battle. And I get why they took some of the stuff away, but I think it's working.
Yeah, definitely. I feel they've added so many things that got added, just made the game feel more like a proper battle, as you said. Whether that be something like all the new command abilities. I love that there's generic command abilities for every phase in the game now.
Yeah.
Rally is so much fun.
Yeah, it feels like you're as the commander of your army. You're having an active role all the time.
Yeah, and just those different command abilities that we get, like Rally is really fun, like Unleash Hell, they all make sense when you're playing the game.
And I mean that's like because obviously whoever is your warlord on the table is the little representation of you. So, it feels like he's actually, or she is actually in control of the battle, which is really cool.
Yeah, that interactivity between players is definitely one of the best things I've seen with the new edition. Just the ability to make choices and do things outside of just trying to gain an objective or something like that. Battle tactics for me has been, I think, the best update to the game in its entirety. I absolutely love the idea. I was really hesitant against secondary objectives overcomplicating the game, but I will say I think they've added battle tactics into such a nice way that it's just a thing you try to do on your turn.
Yeah, and from a narrative perspective too, they're the cool things. It's very similar to some of the Crusade stuff in 40k. As we were saying, they've learnt from bits and pieces. And the Crusade stuff in 40k has similar things. Like they don't really swing the battle, but they feel important to your army, and that's pretty much what they're doing.
Yeah, I do want to see the one thing I really like from 40k. I'd like to see ported over is the actions that are done in 40k. I absolutely love them, like the whole like data mining or planting your flag or
that's your action for the turn.
Yeah, like those ones where you have to give up doing something to claim the point. They're really, really cool in 40k.
Yeah. I mean, again, given how close those sort of systems are getting, I mean, it wouldn't be hard to port it over.
Yeah, and as Mr. Barkley says himself, battle tactics is so important in the game now. Like 2 points a turn is huge in the game now, as scoring is much lower.
Yeah, and like in terms of that, just remember that scoring stuff. From a narrative perspective, you can, if you want to, if you've got a little story going on, you could actually ignore the bigger things and just go for those little, important stuff for your general.
Yeah,
I'm going to give up the battle because I really want to kill that monster, and things like prove myself.
Yeah. And well, speaking of that, I think talking about battle tactics is a great time to add in what we're going to see from what it looks like going forward with the Sons of Bahamut Battle Tome update coming out in White Dwarf. How we're going to see battle tactics, command, grand strategies, and generic battalions. Though that one maybe won't be every army. That may just be Gargants getting that because they need it.
Yeah, I don't know. I was a bit surprised at that, simply because there was so much hoo-ha around losing, army battalions. I don't know. I mean, will they bring it in for other armies? I know Suns obviously need it for the way they fight, but there was a fair bit of stink out there when they did it.
Yeah, I think the battalions, for me, I was really skeptical when that started, because obviously they were straight up about that when we got the new edition. I think it was Ben Johnson who said it in one of the videos, where they wanted to stop haves and have-nots, and that's a good thing to want to stop in the game. Like, because quite clearly, like, narrative gaming aside, like playing battalions, there were definitely some haves and have-nots. You could be an army like Cities, who got widely regarded as not having the greatest battalions. They were cool and they were narrative and fluffy, but they really gave you nothing for the most part. And then you had other ones like Zinch, who had battalions that literally made the army top tier, like things like Change Host.
Yeah.
And that was the problem, is that you had that disparity, like that massive disparity between battalions. It wasn't such a thing as like, oh, you can play this because it's narrative. It's like, well, no, this is instinctively making your army worse by using it. And that's what you sort of want to try to avoid. Just because you want to play narrative, you don't want to have your army be worse off because you are.
Yeah, well, do you think then that, given what we've seen there with Damat, that maybe it's an opportunity they're taking to try and balance army-wide, battalions?
Yeah, and well, so that was my point of like something I liked with what they did with those Gargant battalions is they just gave you the same abilities we got anyway. So it didn't add any new cool rules. It just had, I believe it gave the option for both of them to be unified. It gave one of them the option for to get the artifact or the enhancement. I can't remember what that one's called. And the mini Gargant one got Swift, which was an ability to get a once per game at the double.
Yeah.
So none of them were things we hadn't seen. It was using those core abilities, just changing up how you went about getting them into your army, which I'm not against. I don't mind that.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I guess we'll see with more books, but I mean, the potential then, if the basic premise is we don't want to, give new rules, there is the potential there to change how rules are applied. And they can do that across multiple armies. Yeah.
I definitely think, looking at the GHB on how we got the 2 brand new core battalions in that, and I love the GHB so much as a product, as an actual useful tool to have at the table now. The GHB is the best product they released in any of this by far, as a game tool. That binder on the book, genius.
Yeah, that was that makes. Look, Sam, how many people were already doing that, ripping theirs apart and putting it in a binder? And now, because you can just have the page open that you need.
Yeah. But yeah, so the other part they got is grand strategies. I was never fussed with, because at the end of the day, they're like that tiebreaker for a draw.
Yeah.
They generally will split a draw or a close game, and in tournaments they're going to be like your third tiebreaker after VPs and battle tactics probably. Yeah. So I was never fussed about grand strategies. They really are just like a cool thing to break the tie at the end of the game, really.
Yeah.
Battle tactics was an interesting one. So first of all, I note they added 3 to the Sons of Behemoth, and there are 3 that we lost from the core rules transferring to the General's Handbook. So they've literally replaced those 3, which were like hold the center, repel, and the other one I forget. But they replaced 3. So we got the same amount we would have as if you had everything.
Yeah. And again, I mean, is this something that we're like going to see going forward? Like lose A but gain B.
Yeah. And so long as they're making that balance right, I don't think it's an issue. Which the Gargant ones, in all honesty, like everyone was up in arms when they heard about it in the article they posted. But coming out after it, I don't think any of them are like game breaking at all. I think it just gave Gargants the ability to play with battalions like every other army because they've just got the access to have like a low drop army now, like everyone else does.
Yeah.
And the grand strategy is like actually worse than most of them, in all honesty. Having to run and charge every turn, you might as well just keep one of your Gargants alive because that has to be how you do it anyway.
I mean, I think that the deployment is probably the big one. I suspect that's the biggest one, that the biggest change, and the thing that probably they needed. Because they were always going to be outdropped otherwise.
Yeah, which on the Gargant's front you don't want, because that can be like really bad if your opponent can take off a Gargant or 2 turn 1. I did that against a friend playing his Mega Gargants with my Wildwood Rangers. On average, they kill 1 a turn because they damage 2. And I played him, and I took all 3 of his Mega Gargants off turn 1.
Yeah.
Because 2 units of Wildwood Rangers each killed 1, but then Durthu also struck first, and he had all these buffs up, so he killed another one turn 1.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Gargant stuff is interesting, and I think like solid changes to battle tactics in that. I'll be interested to see how they go forward with that, because we've started seeing a lot of other cool things with the new edition as well. And so let's talk about the battle plans, because I think there's some really interesting stuff on the battle plans and the battle pack itself, because it feels like narrative play has like really seeped into match play.
Yeah. I mean, and again, there's that's that bleed over from the the 40k campaign packs and stuff. But it's very cool.
Yeah, like I like that they've gone to the singular realm for the match play section, or for the General's Handbook. We're playing in the realm that the story is happening in, so that for me is like straight away cool. This is cool for narrative play. We're playing in this realm where the story's happening. We're getting cool like monster-based abilities where monsters do more on the table, but also killing monsters also gets you more points. The ability for your wizards to turn into a monster for a turn is awesome. And the tectonic interference from the Lord of Earthquakes is nice as well.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, like in terms of just the potential to balance stuff. Like it feels like that's been something they've been quite aware of. So they're, as you say, like you lose something, but you gain something.
Yeah, it really does seem that that's been like a massive part of the game of what they're trying to do, is that give and take sort of aspect. So like, and you got to like look at that, like taking monsters. Yeah, you can get all because I think there's 3 or 4 battle tactics where you get an extra point for monsters. But also, if your opponent kills any monsters in a turn, they get a point. So you got to weigh up that sort of benefit.
What am I taking? What am I losing?
Yeah. You need to make sure at least a monster gets you a battle tactic point extra before it dies. Otherwise, you've actually lost on the trade there.
Yeah, it makes my multiple war hydras interesting.
Yeah, I've run that list a couple of times. The 6 war hydra list has been on the channel a few times, and it's fun.
A couple of war hydras and a couple of dreadlords.
Yeah. But yeah, the battle pack's been really interesting. I think one of the White Dwarfs, the next White Dwarf, we're due to get a Realm of Light update as well. Apparently we're going to get some rules for Realm of Light, which will be interesting to see. Whether that's going to give us like some cool new rules and stuff like that, and another battle pack. It'd be interesting to see.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised to start seeing battle packs in the same vein as the sort of campaign books for 40k, where you get a whole lot of battle plans and missions, all specifically tied to one realm or something like that.
Yeah,
so we may get a Realm of Light one.
Yeah, well, that was really cool. That's another thing, like adding the scenarios all themed to be Realm of Beasts. Like, yeah, some of them are just straight up copies of the old ones. I mean, Veins of Gur is literally Starstrike and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But I like that they've made these scenarios focus on the realm. And like the battle pack contains all of that.
And that's what I mean. Like, so like if we, as the narrative goes forward, because they're adapting things as we go, we'll see new campaign packs with new missions that reflect where the story has gone.
Yeah. So speaking of narrative play, I think it's time we actually touched on the narrative play section, and we talked about this plenty on the lead up to the new edition, and I think we both got our wish in this, in that we effectively got Crusade for Age of Sigmar.
That's right.
Path to Glory was completely reinvented, and we now have like a really cool, fully fledged narrative system.
Yeah, I've actually been playing a bit of 40k Crusade, and they are so similar now. It's like they've obviously taken what worked and switched the systems. It's very cool.
Yeah, of course, once again, in the new Battletome update for Sons of Behemoth, they'll be getting their own rules because they, of course, need it because they work a little different. But I like everything I've seen.
Because the old Path to Glory was pretty clunky.
Yeah, Path to Glory worked fine in the initial stages. I remember when it came out in the first GHB, when we got that. I think it worked fine at that point. But obviously, as new books came out and power levels started to differentiate between armies, and it was pretty clear they weren't balancing it properly anymore. I mean,
well, some worked much better than others. That was.
Yeah, I remember. Well, what was it? You could take a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon and still get 3 units. But if you took a Star Drake, you got nothing.
I mean, so I remember playing in the old Realm of Chaos books in 3rd edition fantasy. That's going back a long way, and your Chaos Warband evolved as you went along, and heroes turned into spawn and all that sort of stuff. And that was kind of where Path to Glory felt like it should be going. But, in the end, it was just too messy.
Yeah, it just became quite a bit of a mess in the end, Path to Glory. But with the new system, I think they've tidied it up. It's definitely not expansive at the moment. I think we definitely need some supplements to further push it, and I think we'll see them. They did say, like, we're going to see something similar to how Crusade is getting these extra supplements. So I'll be really excited to see where we go with that and getting these new sort of additions to the game.
Well, as I say, I mean, I suspect we're going to get specific campaign-based things. Like we may actually get some historical campaign stuff as well. Maybe the Plague War stuff sort of turned into Sigmar-ish, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, Sigmar has its own Plague War. We obviously remember the box set with Need Black Talon and Horticulus Slimex.
Yeah.
But
that'd be very cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see where we go with Path to Glory. It definitely needs that expansion because it probably only lasts you a little while at the moment. But it definitely can. With another couple of books, an expansion or two, you'll have plenty of time to play and build your empires and all that sort of stuff that you want from a good narrative wargaming system.
Yeah, and I mean, as we see, Battletomes come out too, but that'll expand it almost exponentially, I would think.
Yeah, I wonder if like we're going to see like their own quest lines and all that. Because effectively in Path to Glory, you choose to go along a quest and you complete certain things throughout games to get your quests completed. wouldn't be surprised to see if that's like sort of what we see in each book, like different quests that give you access to different artifacts or allow you to unlock different troops.
That's the sort of thing in the 40k codices. There's the specific objectives and things for the Crusades in them. So I would imagine we're going to get a similar sort of thing.
Yeah. But yeah, so open play is what it is. It's got the game generator back, which is nice. I really do love the open war generator. That's a really cool system. I'm glad to see that back in open play.
I really like the in first edition the cards.
Yeah,
you could throw them out, and that was your mission.
Yeah, I'm almost tempted to like run an event at some point, just using those cards to go. Here's what we're playing.
Yeah,
and you just go, battle tactics are a thing in this, but here you go.
Yeah, because it meant you could rock up and still play a relatively narrative-y game, because you with your specific objectives and things like that.
Yeah. And so that's pretty much the core rule book. I want to talk a little bit about the future of what we're going to see, because as mentioned, we're probably only about 2 weeks away and a bit from seeing some Kruleboyz and Stormcast book battle tomes.
Yeah.
And they're going to be really exciting. The first battle tomes of a new edition are always exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be. Stormcast will probably get 2 during the edition if GW keep up to their standard format, but yeah.
But yeah, I think. So we'll start with the Kruleboyz, because I guess we've got less to talk about here. What is your take on the Kruleboyz? Now we've seen the entire faction line. We've seen everything. We know they're going to be part of War Clans. What's your take on them?
Look, aesthetically, they're not my thing. Like, I've always liked the old school GW Orc line. I see what they're doing with them. They're very different, and I'm kind of surprised they didn't get their own book. But I suppose that's what the War Clans were when they roll Bone Splitters and Iron Jaws and stuff together. The way they play seems quite different to the other Oryx, though. So I'm not sure how effective a real mixed force would be.
Yeah, I think the mixed force is going to be interesting, because I think that's going to take quite a lot of play of like playing all those different parts together in harmony. It's going to be interesting to see how that sort of goes together. But like you said, they do offer a distinct different style. It's not just like this is a different orc. It really does change up like how you're playing, because they've got all these more tricksy, more sneaky, almost grot-like abilities, really.
Yeah.
Abilities you would expect to get from a grot army. Which is cool.
I'm kind of like, for me, the most interesting part of all of that, especially in terms of their narrative and their story, was the reference to the Chaos Duarden that the Hobgrots trade with. I'm more interested in that.
Yeah, well, that's a whole different kettle of fish. Yeah. Chaos Duarden. Are we going to get Chaos Dwarves as a full plastic army? Because GW have a lot of people's money if that is the case.
Yeah, I know. And like, it's the way that they sound, the way that they're mentioned. So it says Duarden holds that fell to Chaos. So that sounds like sort of second and third ed, dwarves who are just Chaos worshippers, as opposed to the sort of the
Hashut and all that sort of
stuff. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. Either way, I'm interested.
Yeah. If you have a question in the chat, go ahead and ask, and we'll answer whatever you've got questions there for you, Rick. But yeah, I'm really excited for Chaos Dwarves. If they're a thing, like, there are so many people that want that army to be a thing. Yeah.
And not a Forge World one, like a GW one, because Forge World ones just go away eventually.
Yeah. What is interesting, because like Chaos Dwarves for me, they never really, when Forge World released those models, they didn't really fit fantasy for me. Like they always felt out of place and just too over the top for fantasy.
A bit too techno.
Yeah, but with Age of Sigmar, they sort of fit. And I was just like, oh, this army actually works in Age of Sigmar. It's probably one of the most Age of Sigmar armies that's not made properly for Age of Sigmar.
And then, of course, they just went away.
Yeah, they just disappeared one night.
But yeah, I mean, Stormcast Dwarves have had this loyal following online for a long time, and it was just interesting. They got a little mention. I thought in that sort of fluff for the Cruel Boys, like he's this new reimagined Orc force, and this little hiding in the middle of us, this little tidbit.
Yeah, but it's an interesting one because we've got those tidbits before. Like, I remember when Idoneth Deepkin were first mentioned in the Daughters of Cain battle tome. When the Kraith, there was a little blurb about the Kraith fighting some Sylvaneth, and the Idoneth Deepkin came, and no one had an idea who they were at that point. And of course, they turned out to be our fish elves. Codex Fish People confirmed. But yeah, so I'll be interesting to see like what they do. They generally don't throw those little hangers out without, and especially since they released that in the, because that's not in the battle tome. Obviously, that's from the little mini book you get with Dominion.
Yeah. So I mean, don't know, but yeah, I think especially if they do release them. I mean, because originally obviously they had the Hobgoblin servants, if you will, or allies, and then greenskin slaves. Maybe if they come out, you'll be able to put Cruel Boys and them in the same list, which would be interesting.
Yeah. So Rick's question was: so the Sons of Behemoth are a fairly new army. You've got the rules printed in White Dwarf. Do you think we'll see the same for other new armies, OBR, and focus on getting like the oldest armies up to books? I think that is certainly what's happening, Rick.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think they're trying to keep everyone happy as well. Because with the new system, with the way like the new app and stuff's going to work, like 40K, you won't be able to get digital products. So having those sorts of things in White Dwarf mean you can still get access to the rules and stuff without having to, splurge on the app, I guess.
Yeah. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if like the Battletome updates we see for armies like Soulblight Gravelords, Lumineth Realmlords, Slanesh, Daughters of Cain, those armies, and like obviously Battletomes are going to be reserved for either armies that are very strong in the narrative, or are relatively new books. So rumors are our next books are, well, we obviously know the next two. Rumors are the next one is going to be Beasts for the Chaos, which makes sense.
Hallelujah.
It's Chaos' most bestial army. Realm of Beasts.
We haven't had a book for a while.
Yeah. And then other rumors on other books coming out are Nurgle, Skaven, and Cities, which all just sort of make sense narratively. Nurgle probably more so from it's just old. But Skaven and Cities certainly make a narrative point for me. I mean,
and maybe seeing, given where the narrative is, maybe we'll see some specific city rules for those cities in Gur.
Yeah, well, obviously, I would assume we're going to see the end of Anvilgard, and Harkuron will take its place in a new cities book if that's what's going to happen. Very sad day for me.
Tell me about
it. But if Harkuron, I think, takes the best parts of Anvilgard into it, I'm fine. And there's still Misthaven. I really like Misthaven a lot, which obviously will probably get added as well. And then we've also got Settlers Gain and Excelsis. Excelsis, of course, which is majorly important because it's the main city in Gur.
Cities is always going to be an interesting book because there's so much in it.
Yeah, well, it's the one you build with. Cities is that ground level building book, I think. But yeah,
and there's a whole lot of potential too for the stuff in Gur. I mean, some of the weird stuff in the stories that they haven't touched on yet too.
I hope we get to that in Warcry. I want to see that in Warcry. How we got things like the Llama Cat and the Myrmidon and all that sort of stuff, and the Raptorix. But yeah, so the Cruel Boys, I'm excited because they do seem to have some cool rules. I like that they've got a shaman as their major player. It does sort of continue to fit with the whole we're not fighty orcs, we're sneaky orcs, we're mork orcs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they do have the dude on the big vulture.
Yeah, he's a wizard. Gob Sprack, I think.
Yeah.
Friend of Kragnos, as he likes to say.
Friend. Yeah. Does
Well,
Kragnos have
apparently,
friends?
yeah. Well, apparently his thing is he can speak lots of languages. Apparently he's got a way with languages, and he actually is the only person who can speak to Kragnos.
Mm.
In other ways than fists. Godrak tried that, did not work.
Yeah, I'm still a bit like, where are we going to fit Kragnos in all of this?
Well, he's an interesting one because, like, obviously we've got the Draconith back, and so this will be a good segue into Stormcast.
Yeah.
Dragons, like, I mean, people went nuts when they came out. Like, dragons, we're going to see that all-dragon army a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think too, as cool as much as there is the rule of cool stuff, it also appeals for those first army people, because as much as they're pricey money wise, it's much quicker to get an army on the tabletop.
Yeah, and if they continue that sort of GW of like roughly spending about 1,400 for a 2K army, I mean, there was someone who did the math when like everyone was like, "Oh, Lumineth look expensive," or the Gargants look expensive, but they do generally cost the same as another army, a general army, over the time because you're buying less. But on that, yeah, I just think we're going to see that dragon army a lot. Like, it's dragons. Dragons are the most popular fantasy creature out there. We're going to see dragons for days.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I as soon as I saw them, I thought, because I've got a Star Drake sitting here, and I thought, oh, Star Drake, a couple of them.
Yeah. So on the topic of Stormcast, and someone's just commented, he's like, my friend openly said he's pre-ordering 4 units of Battleline Dragons upon release. And I'm like, yeah, I have no doubt. Like, those models are going to go quick. If you want them, I strongly suggest, or at least want them on launch. They're going to sell really well.
Yeah, they're going to just be gone.
Yeah. But another point of Stormcast I really like is, through the articles we've been reading, we are starting to see they're actually giving quite a lot of love to the older versions of Stormcast, which I was really happy to see.
Yeah.
Lots of Battleline options. Very reminiscent of the KO Battle Tome, how there's just so many ways to unlock other pieces.
Yeah, there was a bit of a worry initially that the old Stormcast were going to be, Primarist. But I think, with what we're seeing now means that your Liberators and your Judicators have still got a place in your army, which is very cool.
Yeah. Like, I really like the idea the Knights Excelsior get Paladins as Battleline. Paladins are my favorite Stormcast models. Dracothian Guard, a Battleline, and Hammers as Sigmar. You've got the new Knight Dragon model. I forget what Knight he is called, but he makes the new Dragons Battleline. And then we've got loads of Battleline options already, because Vanguard Hunters, Judicators, Sequitors, Liberators, and Vindictors are all plain Battleline now.
Yeah. It means you can, but I mean that they are the poster children for Sigmar. So, but you can. That means you can have 10 different Stormcast armies that look nothing like each other.
Yeah, and that's what you want. Like, Marine, everyone says there's always Space Marines everywhere in 40k, but they all look different.
Yeah.
Like, you've got all those different Space Marine options in the game that I really wish we do see more things like. I hope the new Black Templar thing in 40k makes Black Templars look like Black Templars again.
Yeah.
Because, like, things like Space Wolves look different. Grey Knights look different. Death Watch look different. And I hope this is what we start to see with these Stormcast armies when we do start to see probably more of them coming back out, because I would say it's probably, well, what is it? Normally in the competitive meta, they make up, 10 to 20% of the meta?
Yeah, about that.
From time to time. So it's like, I hope we do start to see more Stormcast coming back out, but we start to see these varied Stormcast lists again.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that was the problem I think we've had for a while at the end of the last edition, was if you did see Stormcast, it was the same list.
Yeah, there were two lists. There was Shootcast and then the 60 Liberators. That was it.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think, given the multiple options we've got now, I don't think we'll see that now.
No, I think we're going to see very, very, which is good. Because it's probably the one thing, go back to our favorite army, cities. What cities does really well is it has this good spread of armies that you can build all these different units. And I don't think cities has a bad unit in the book, not one that you can't use for something.
Yeah.
And so it does seem like they're trying to do that with Stormcast.
And the fact that they have got those different unlocks for the different types of Stormcast. I really like the Dracothian Guard, but I've really struggled to find a list to put them in. But if I can take them as battle line, then there's an army, bang, done. Because you put a couple of units of them in, and then maybe one of the new dragons, and if you got the points, your Stardrake. That's a really themey, dragony army, especially for the stuff in Gur.
Yeah, no, I really like what we're seeing with Stormcast, and the Cruel Boys as well. Like, it does seem like the Oryx are getting a lot of options as well. The Savage Orcs had that shooting option. There seems to be a magic build in Auric War plans. They seem to be getting more armies to play in more different ways, but also making sure that army has to work to get that different way as well. So it's not just the same thing doing different things. It's actually playing with different models if you want to do a different style of army.
Yeah, and from the perspective of the narrative game, that's gold.
Yeah,
because there's no point. Like, you can take your narrative list, and it won't necessarily be it's going to go shit because it's a narrative list. You actually are up there with the other armies. So just because you play narrative doesn't mean you're going to be the whipping boy.
Yeah. And so we've got a couple of things in the chat for questions. So do you think it was a missed opportunity to give the dragons to Stormcast and not using them as their own order army? I guess narrative-wise, it does sort of fit because they're not supposed to be a whole race. They're like a recovering race.
Yeah. I don't know. I get that question because when they made the announcement, I thought, oh, cool, new army, and there was a moment of sort of, oh, okay, it's another Stormcast unit, but yeah, I don't know whether they have the stamina, you know what I mean, for an army on their own. Like, how many different ways can you do a dragon,
And we don't want another Sons of Behemoth army. Like, Sons of Behemoth is cool, but you don't want multiple armies that are relying on 4 different units.
Yeah.
I think
I would like to see a new army. I really would like to see a new army. But I don't think that's the way to go with them.
Yeah. My thing with like armies now is we've got 24 armies in the game, I believe now. Like, we've got a lot of armies in the game already. We've probably still got 1 or 2 more armies to come out. So we've probably got Malarian and whatever he's doing, and we've probably got those Chaos Dwarves. And I think at that point, we're set for armies for like a long, long time in the game. I think after you got them out, it's all about expanding those ranges. Things like Fire Slayers, things like Deepkin that don't have expansive ranges. I mean, we're already probably sure we're going to see a Kurnothi range update in Sylvaneth. Like, that's where the Kurnothi will go. They won't be their own army. They'll be Sylvaneth.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'd like to see, as I said, a Kurnothi army as well. But yeah, there is that risk of bloat. And that was one of the issues I think that killed fantasy in the end too. They started to release small factions like Kislev and stuff in various books and things like that, and eventually got to the point where what do I do? How do I do it? We've got to be careful with that, I think, in terms of Sigmar.
Yeah. Yeah, because you don't want to have these like little dangler factions that only have a couple of things. I'm at the point where there's enough armies in the game. I'd much rather see, unless it's going to be like a massive new army, something like we saw with like Lumineth,
Yeah.
Unless it's going to be that scale, I'd rather just see 3 or 4 units added to someone like Fire Slayers or Deepkin.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, see, they had that release with Deepkin too, and that was that unique AOS army. I mean, look, if we're honest, Lumineth are high elves by any other name, with the whole Asian, elemental stuff.
Yeah, they're very bet. You get something like, I guess, Fire Slayers, which are like definitely an evolved version of Old Dwarves, same as KO. Like they're evolved into Age of Sigmar, where Lumineth are barely not high elves. They're like one step.
Yeah, and see the Idoneth were they're the new they're like a Sigmar-esque. If they were going to do something, I mean, what? And look, KO too to a lesser extent. I mean, they're cyberpunk dwarves, and that's why I think we do the Chaos Dwarves, we do it right. We might see something like that none of us are ready for. It might be something completely different,
Yeah,
which I think would be really cool.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, it's besides those two. I think there's nothing else I want to see as like Malarian, and like even then, like, are we sure Malarian's going to be his own army and not added into Daughters of Cain? Like that's my biggest thought. Like every time Malarian's in a story, it's with Marathi. Every time.
Even then, or they've already said they've set the scene for Harkuron. That sort of stuff. I mean, if Malarian jumps up and said, all right, all you old school dark elves, come with me, we might see him sort of drag some of those things out of cities into his book.
Yeah, and look, I'm not against that. If he drags units out and makes a new army, I'm completely fine with it. I'd much rather see that than units disappear. And yeah, we've got people in the chat saying Kernothi should just be the other half of Sylvaneth. Yep, completely fine with that. As long as you can run a full Kernothi force, I'm fine.
See, I've always loved, that the old Orion, and the idea of those ties to the Celtic mythology stuff. Oh, that was really cool. So I'd love to see a Kernothi army in its own right. With maybe even more so than Alariel, tie it to the seasonal stuff, like depending on what season your army's from, you get different abilities or something. That would be cool.
Yeah, I mean, we all know I'm a massive fan of Orion.
I've noticed. Yeah.
Do have a child called Orion, but I think it's going to be like really exciting times going forward with Age of Sigmar because we've got people going like, oh, maybe Doc will be a part of Malarian's army. Yeah, maybe like we'll see that evolution of Daughters of Cain into like the Harkuron Empire or something like that, where we get this Dark Elf army that's just Dark Elves and it's Malarian and Marathi combined.
Well, of course, Marathi actually, playing nice with others is maybe not, but.
Yeah, well, her and her son have that love-hate relationship.
Quite literally.
Yeah, quite literally. Very Game of Thrones. That's all we'll say about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be an interesting time. I'm really excited to see these new battle tomes and just see where we're going with the edition. I'm excited to see like the next narrative sort of piece. I'm currently reading Dominion by Darius Hinks, which I strongly recommend anyone give a pick up to because, first of all, Darius does really good novels. He did the Orion trilogy in fantasy for one, which was very good. And he's done a couple of the Gotrek stories as well.
Yeah, I mean, it does help when they get their better writers to do the important stuff.
Yeah, they do seem to be like improving. Like the writing quality from Black Library from AOS has been really strong. Like I've enjoyed a lot of what I've read recently. The latest Gotrek book, Git Slayer, is absolutely amazing. And then End of Enlightenment was really solid as well by Richard Strachan.
Haven't read that one yet.
That is probably one of the best war novels I've read in Age of Sigmar. It's not so much you get like a lot of these like fighting novels where they're just sort of one army overcoming the other. And that's sort of like the thing where this one actually puts like, oh, the Lumineth put up a problem, so now the Bone Reapers conquer that problem. The Bone Reapers then cause a problem to the Lumineth overcome that. So it shows both sides continuously tilting that pendulum backwards and forwards, which is really cool. It makes for a really interesting novel rather than just we beat this, then we beat this, then we beat this, which can sometimes be the case with Black Library.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Black Library too. I mean, they've got a history of getting some of the really good authors to write the first couple in the series to suck you in, and then they let any old Dick or Harry write the next few, and it just kills it.
Yeah, but I guess the next sort of thing to like leave on with is what do you hope to see next from the edition in the future? Like we talked a little bit about.
Well, I mean, my perspective is more of the Crusade type stuff being ported over from 40k. Like I said, I've been loving the releases for Crusade in 40k, so I'm hoping to see the same sort of thing ported across. Because I mean, given the COVID world that we're in, getting to actual sort of 2 and 3 day events is going to be really hard. But a single day sort of narrative events, maybe is the way to go forward.
Yeah, even playing games in your household, like you're lucky enough to have people that you can game with in your household.
Yeah.
The same here, so that sort of stuff is really interesting.
Because we're pretty lucky where I am that we haven't had, touch wood, any actual COVID in the town, and assuming we're able to get out of this lockdown, there are a couple of guys in town that actually play as well. So we've got a nice, tiny little community here of both AOS and 40k gamers. So we can do the narrative stuff, which is good. That's part of the reason I think I'm so keen for that stuff, because not being able to go anywhere and do events, that's going to be my gaming for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to, like, we hope to get a couple of narrative campaigns up on the channel soon. We'll have Warcry, and we should have Warcry, Skirmish, and Path to Glory up very soon on the channel, which will be great to sort of see. And then we're looking at getting Crusade up for 40k as well, once I finally get a 40k army or two painted up. We're working on it. But yeah, for me, I think those Crusade, those Path to Glory supplements are going to be very important to see the longevity of Path to Glory and the viableness of Path to Glory continue. Yeah. It definitely needs it. I'm excited to see where Warcry goes this year. I hope we get another good Tome of Champions, because I am a strong believer that Tome of Champions last year was one of the best releases GW did all year. Tome of Champions 2020 was amazing.
Yeah, and as we were saying, when those sorts of releases are cross-fertilizing each other, it feels like the new kill team 40k has taken a lot of the stuff from Warcry.
Yeah. Underworld, I'm excited to see what they do with Underworld, because Underworld is always one of those games that's really interesting where we sort of maybe get a first look at stuff.
Underworld is awesome, and that's every member of this house plays Underworld.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be really interesting. I mean, I'm assuming the start collecting box for Underworlds this year is going to be Stormcast Vindictors or Annihilators or something versus Cruel Boys. I will be really surprised if it's not.
Well, I mean, I think we'll get Cruel Boys. I don't know whether because the core box was that for Sigmar. Yeah. I don't know, that we might get something different.
Maybe Cities. Cities could be the other one I think that maybe suited, like Cities and Cruel Boys.
We haven't got Cities yet, so yeah.
Maybe like a free guild warband or something. But Underworlds is always interesting. I mean, it's always the best models every year are released in Underworlds.
Crabs.
Yeah. Krabnos. I love it when they release Kragnos at the same reveal stream as that crab. Absolutely no one cared about anything else. There was so many cool models in that reveal, and everyone's just like, "There's a crab."
Yeah. and he's a crab in his own right. He's got his own card.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
It was just, it was brilliant because, like, just everyone going nuts over a crab when there were so many other cool models revealed that.
Yeah, but that's just, I mean, that's what they can do, that weird and wacky shit with, with Underworlds and with Warcry and stuff like that. And that's, I mean, again, I mean, 40k does it with Blackstone Fortress and those things, and it lets you add the weird and wacky things to their worlds without having to go, where can I slot this weird thing in? It's just, well, here you go. Have your crap. Have your mushrooms.
I'd be really excited to see like more Underworld's warbands as well. Not Underworld, sorry, Warcry. Like, so we've got the K-Knight Shadowstalkers, and they started exploring that other space in Warcry that I'm really excited to see us get some new stuff for.
Yeah, and I mean, Warcry again, they can do all the weird and wacky shit.
Like those Chaos warbands are phenomenal. Every single one of them is amazing.
Yeah, the Unmade.
For me, it's got to be the either the Splintered Fang or what are they called? I forget the name of them. The Realm of Light ones.
Oh yes,
Cypher Lords. And then there's something about the Untamed Beast. Maybe it's the love of like Conan that I love the Untamed Beasts as well. It's just that pure Conan vibe they've got.
And even the Varangue, basically what are effectively the Varan Spire guys, with all the different, little nuancey things on them.
Yeah. But I think we've pretty much talked our way through the new edition. So we're going to be back at this every fortnight for the narrative show for the new edition. We aim to be talking a lot more about the narrative side of wargaming. I mean, all the battle tomes are going to be having narrative wargaming sections in them, so that's going to be a ton of fun to talk about when they come out. But you'll probably see us in a couple of weeks, at which point we probably will have Cruel Boys and Stormcast to be talking about. So with that said, last thing I want to shout out is we're working on our Age of Sigmar Soulbound campaign, which will be starting soon. We're organising getting our Session 0 done, so you should have that to look forward to as well soon. And as I said, there'll be more battle reports and more campaigns coming out on the channel for narrative play as well, which everyone can look forward to. But with that, I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who has joined us tonight. Don't forget to leave a like if you haven't already. It helps everyone come find the show and the channel in general. And also, massive shout out to everyone who helps support the channel via Patreon and YouTube members. You guys pay for all the streaming software that we use and everything like that. So that makes life easy. Also, if you are a YouTube member at the moment, there are little emojis in the chat you can use because we've added them in now. So all our YouTube members get to use our cool little emojis. But everyone, thank you all for watching today. We'll be back in a fortnight to chat again about narrative Warhammer Age of Sigmar. So stay safe, everyone. Stay well. And most of all, keep fighting that war against the Grey. Ciao for now.